Academy de Montréal, founded that same year. The Academy spoke out for the first time in a letter published in La Gazette, in which it stated about Voltaire, and I quote, "Voltaire raised the veil over the vices and crimes that men have generally concealed from himself. He was the foe of fanaticism and consequently the enemy of enthusiasm and superstition. That was his first crime." End of quote. Also, Valentin Jotard, the friend of Mr. But there's no picture existing of Mr. Jotard, the friend of Fleury Mespret, published an open letter to a Jesuit in La Gazette. And think you're in Montreal in the 18th century. Answer this. The soul is a spirit. Can that spirit exist and be in no place? If it is in a place, it must occupy a place. If it occupies a place, it is extensive. If it is extensive, it has parts. And if it has parts, it is matter. This reasoning is quite simple. Try to demolish it. End of quote. It goes without saying that these remarks brought the fury of the clergy against La Gazette Littéraire. However, the members of the Academy sent a letter to Governor Haldimand, who succeeded the Carton, stating, and I quote, "The desire to educate ourselves has brought us together, and we, friends of science, propose to contribute to excite the emulation of young people. To do so, our enterprise lacks only the approval of your excellency." End of quote. However, the superior of the Sulpician priests, who lived near Mesplet's shop, wrote a letter to the governor in which he denounced, and I quote, "a set plan to cause trouble in your province and to undermine, if such were possible, the foundations of all religion, no S, so necessary, even in the purely political order, to the public peace." The governor answered the priest that Mesplet was expressly prohibited from attacking religion or the clergy, and he asked the priest to monitor Fleury Mesplet and to warn him if he strayed from the conduct he had imposed on him. The priest did not lose a second in honoring the governor's request. Mesplet was quickly imprisoned together with his collaborateur Jotard. Thus, in June 1779, the stormy adventure of La Gazette Littéraire abruptly ended, a direct consequence of the alliance between civil and religious authority. In short, Fleury Mesplet, who was nicknamed the Freedom's Printer, friend of Benjamin Franklin and disciple of Voltaire, spread the Enlightenment in French Canada, in addition to waging war against fanaticism and intolerance, for a free press and for public education, the basis in his mind of respect for human rights. Then, the French Revolution broke out. French Canada was not influenced by it as a result of its status as a British colony, a status of which the Church knew how to take advantage. The new Bishop of Quebec was the first to sign the Manifesto of the Loyalist Association of Quebec, in which it was stated that England was our motherland. The signatories to the manifesto undertook to do everything in their power to give the executive government vigorous and effective support to stop, and I quote, to stop in their principles all commotion and attempts on any pretext whatsoever tending to disturb the peace. End of quote. With the support of British authorities, The clergy were then able to establish its undivided domination over French Canadian society and readily managed to prevent the slightest expression of free thinking. However, this situation culminated in a serious dispute because in 1837, the colonial regime and the absence of responsible government led to rebellion in both English-speaking Upper Canada and French-speaking Lower Canada. The rebellions failed. The causes of that failure in Lower Canada are many, but one of them was definitely the attitude of the clergy. For example, the Bishop of Montreal at that time stated, and I quote, "There is no power that does not come from God, who establishes all those that exist. Consequently, those who oppose the powers resist God's order, and those who resist will bring condemnation upon themselves." End of quote. And now we can pass to the next one. It must be understood, one of the main political leaders of the rebels, Louis-Joseph Papineau, called for the separation of church and state. In the Legislative Assembly, he denounced the clergy's claim that it was master of the civil authority. Papineau, a Democrat with a highly liberal mind, redefined French-Canadian society in secular terms and advocated the necessity of a clear distinction between political and religious values. He constantly asserted the rights of laymen against clerical encroachment. Papineau also shaped the plan to concentrate under the authority of the House of Assembly institutions that had been under the exclusive control of the clergy, such as the hospitals and educational institutions. In fact, Papineau had abandoned all belief in the revealed religions by the time he finished his studies, adopting instead a rational and natural morality inspired by the spirit of the Enlightenment to which he adhered. During his long life, he died at 85, Papineau remained unshakable in that conviction. A number of the other protagonists in the same rebellion in 1837 were also resolutely opposed to clericalism. Two significant examples. A doctor named Cote, who was active in the rebellion, asserted the priests all over the world are swindlers and scoundrels who preach to the simple-minded what they do not believe themselves. So absurd and in contradiction with reason are their various doctrines. End of quote. And Robert Nelson wrote the Declaration of Independence of Lower Canada, the fourth article of which proclaimed, and I quote, that all union between church and state is hereby declared abolished, and every person has the right to exercise freely the religion and belief that is dictated to him by his conscience. End of quote. In 1844, the anti-clerical and liberal movement developed further with the founding of the Canadian Institute, l'Institut Canadien as we called it in Montreal. Among other things, it demanded the separation of church and state and a government subsidized schools free of all sectarian instruction. Also, the Institute newspaper called L'Avenir, the future, asserted that, and I quote, the history of the papacy is the history of all the crimes that dishonor humanity. So they were pretty clear, right? End of quote. The newspaper Le Pays also supported the Canadian Institute. Its manager, and can we pass the